Good afternoon, Malacañang Press Corps, and welcome to our press briefing today, June 6th. Earlier this morning, a sectoral meeting led by President Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. discussed with the Department of Trade and Industry, or DTI, its efforts to mitigate and address the impacts of the global economic outlook. Isa sa mga solusyon dito ay palawakin pa ang exports ng bansa sa pamamagitan ng proposed Philippine Export Development Plan 2023 to 2028. The PEDP aims to pursue export development as a national agenda to increase the country's global competitiveness. And to give us details about this, we have here today Trade Secretary Alfredo E. Pascual. Good afternoon, Secretary Pascual.
Good afternoon, Daphne.
Go ahead.
Shall I
Yes.
proceed? Yeah, we presented to the President the proposed Philippine Export Development Plan, which DTI formulated pursuant to the Export Development Act of 1994. As already mentioned, this defines the country's export thrusts, strategies, programs, and projects. And we sought the President's approval, which we got, with just some couple of additions to the plan. The PDP aims to address challenges that we face in various sectors of the economy, particularly those sectors that are involved in or potentially could be involved in exports. And our proposal is actually in line with the Philippine Development Plan, which was earlier released by the administration. This Export Development Plan will capitalize on export growth opportunities, considering market trends and the available or existing competencies in the Philippines among our industries. It seeks to undertake an industry development-centric approach to make the Philippines a major player in the global economy and achieve sustainable development goals. In the past, we simply do policies at the macro level that applies to the whole economy, but what we're proposing in the Export Development Plan is industry-level intervention or policy issuances that will support sector development. And even beyond that, we're also proposing firm-level interventions because we believe that we need to work closely with individual firms to be able to take care of their needs as they venture into potential export business for their companies. The export competitiveness of the Philippines lies in the competitiveness of the firms themselves. It's not, we say competitiveness of the country, but actually the competitiveness is being materialized or realized at the firm level. That's why the firm level intervention. So we must develop reliable, design-driven, technology-driven, sustainable, and forward-looking exporters to become or to make the Philippines an agile export powerhouse. As you may know, the Philippines is lagging behind our neighboring countries when it comes to export. We can consider ourselves as laggards currently. So this plan will help us uplift the the Philippines' performance in exports. It may not be to yet match the levels achieved by the more progressive neighbors that we have, but it will certainly improve the volume of our exports. The plan outlines 3 strategic actions to develop the export clusters. 1, addressing production constraints. 2, developing a strong, innovative export ecosystem. And 3, increasing the Philippines' mind share in the global market. So before we can export, we need to produce. So the first challenge is helping industries produce products that can compete in the market. This requires input of technology, it requires raising of productivity, training of the people that they employ, etc. Now, you have the firm. A firm does not operate in a vacuum, so you need an ecosystem to support it. Then the ecosystem will involve, for example, the recent one example is the recently ratified RCEP, which came into force last Friday, June 2, because that's part of the export ecosystem, because that opens up certain countries for exports of the Philippines with reduced or preferential tariff. So it become more competitive vis-a-vis exports coming from competing countries. Okay. Now, developing this ecosystem is a major task that involves various agencies of the government. So we're working with them, including our own customs, for example, the rules that they have, that exporters have to observe, and the requirements for exporting coming from some regulatory agencies. And then the third strategy is increasing the Philippines' mind share in the global market. What do we mean by this? We need to raise the awareness of our target markets about the export firms and the exportable products available from the Philippines. This will involve doing promotional efforts like what we've done with the presidential visits. It's raising awareness about the Philippine investment climates, the potential businesses that can be pursued in our country by foreign investors. Expos, participation in expos, for example, is one way to promote our exports, or holding trade fairs. So those are the three strategies. Now, there are many firms in the country that we need to help. So we need to stratify them so we are able to focus on those that require more significant support over others. That's why we came up with three classifications. One, the breakers, and then those that are at the crest, and those that are creating ripples. Okay? The ones that are breakers are those who have already broken into the international market. So they are able to already export their products in sizable volume. So most likely they won't help, or they won't need any more specific support from the government. So we'll be there providing them the regular support in terms of trade facilitation, the right regulations, etc. Then there are those that are cresting, about to break but still at the crest. These are those that have shown export capability and have actually done transactions with foreign buyers, like animation, game development, software development. Okay, we will provide them bigger support at the firm level compared to those who are already breakers. And then there are those that are still at the ripple stage, small waves, creating small waves. These are the firms that are in high-tech industries, and these are the ones that will get the significant amount of firm-level support. So the PEDP, or Philippine Export Development Plan 2023-2028, sets a clear direction and pragmatic approach for transforming the country's export landscape. By promoting investments, facilitating trade, and developing key industry clusters, the plan aims to achieve substantial export growth and establish the Philippines as a producer of high-value products and services. Now, there are 4 priority industry clusters that we have identified. These are also reflected in the Philippine Development Plan. First is the industrial, machinery, and transport cluster. Included here are firms in the semiconductor subsector, those that are going into electric vehicles, and those that will process our mineral ores into semi-finished or finished products. And then there is the second cluster, the technology, media, and telecommunications. This is where the IT, BPM subsector comes in. These are the BPOs, and they are the ones that are in the technology field, telecom, and support for digital economy like data centers will fall under this cluster, as well as telecommunications. And then the third cluster is the health and life sciences cluster. This is the cluster where we will aspire to be self-sufficient in the country's supply of pharmaceuticals, medical devices, and healthcare services. Okay. There's a fourth cluster, which is not necessarily export-oriented, unlike the first three I mentioned. This is the modern basic needs of a resilient economy. Included here are all other sectors of the economy that will provide us, for example, food security, energy security, and other basic needs to make our economy or our country resilient. Okay, so that's essentially is an overview of the Philippine Export Development Plan for 2023-2028. I'll be ready to answer questions that you might have.
Okay, Alexis Romero, Philippine Star.
Secretary, you mentioned the Philippines being a laggard in terms of the export sector. What do you think is the weakest point in that particular aspect, and how does the plan intend to address it?
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about. We are laggards because we have firms that are not able to come up with the quantity and quality of exportable products. Just to cite an example, there's a big market for durian in China, but we cannot cope with the required quantity. Okay. In other areas, same thing. Example, I mentioned game development. We're starting to do this software development, but we need, more skilled manpower. So there is constraint in availability of skilled manpower. So we have to address that constraint. And as you will notice, we are identifying for different sectors with export potential, what their constraints are, and we will try to address it at the industry level. But also, there are certain firms that might require greater support, and we will do it. We will do our intervention at the firm level, including what we're doing now for MSMEs, providing consulting support, technical assistance, etc. Yes.
Sam Medanilia, Business Mirror.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Itatanong lang namin kung anong klaseng intervention yung ibibigay ng DTI pagdating dun sa mga cresting and rippling ng mga industry. Will include possible incentives or tax-related measures.
Hindi, yung mga tax incentives, standard yan, yung sinasabi nating intervention, binanggit ko na rin yung mga examples, yung consulting services, providing access to technology, okay? And sometimes just mere introduction, of the Philippine firm with potential for export and a potential buyer from abroad. So that's also a type of service that we will provide. Well, I mentioned we're laggard in export, particularly in the export of goods, yung merchandise exports. But we are rather doing better and sometimes can be considered ahead of our neighboring countries in the export of services. Typical example of these services are those offered by the BPOs, the IT BPM sector, IT information technology and BPM business management, business process management.
Okay. Kathy Valente, Manila Times.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. Sir, ngayon lang namin statement at DTI at ng Palasyo po regarding the latest inflation ng bansa. Paano po ito mararamdaman ng mamamayan at ano po yung mga hakbangin na ginagawa ng gobyerno para mas mapababa pa po itong inflation ng bansa? Thank you po.
Well, yung inflation na pag-usapan din namin, nakikita naman namin na bumababa na yung inflation, Nung past month, 6.1 na lang, Actually, ang solution dyan nga, yung remove the bottlenecks. Kasi there are two types of inflation we're watching, yung food inflation tsaka non-food. Sa food inflation, one source of increases in prices is because of bottlenecks in the supply chain. For example, may big harvest in a certain area. Yung harvest na yon hindi nakakarating where the demand is. So, ang solution doon is make sure that the logistics are available to be able to deliver the harvest to where the demand is. Pero ang major basis din o cause nung decline in inflation rate is yung pagbaba ng mga prices ng oil, for example, and other commodities that we are importing. Pati presyo ng coal, for example, for power generation.
Okay. Ivan Mayrina, GMA 7.
Nabanggit niyo po yung oil na ini-import natin. Ang Saudi Arabia po nag-announce ng cut sa kanilang output na inaasahan natin magre-resulta sa pagtaas ng presyo ulit ng crudo next month. Gaano ho ka prone or gaano ka vulnerable ang ating mga basic commodities? Do you expect another round of increases as a result of this?
Sa tingin ko, itong pagtataas ng presyo ng langis na ginawa ng Saudi Arabia, isang defensive move para hindi tuloy-tuloy ang pagbaba ng oil. Pwede rin hindi magresulta ng increase pero hindi na bababa ng lower level.
Ano ho kaya magiging impact nito sa presyo ng ating commodities?
Hindi, kung hindi nga gagalaw yung presyo, di neutral. Kung bumaba pa, baka mag-cut back ulit sila ng production. Ganoon naman yun di ba? Supply and demand. Kung taas yung supply compared sa demand, baba ang price. Kung mas mataas yung demand kaysa supply, tataas ang price. So, yun ang binabalance ng mga producers. May impact yan, siyempre, pag tumaas yung price ng oil. Pero ang tingin ko nga, baka hindi naman magresulta ng pagtaas overall, kundi na-maintain lang where it is, para hindi na bumaba.
All right. Any further questions? Yeah, please give the mic.
Sir, I'm Mads Fernandez. Sir,
Saan ka?
regarding the question of Mr. Ivan Mayrina, so you're trying to, explain, is the DTI is projecting this long-term price changes for the Philippine domestic economy. Can you try to elaborate this?
May sinabi ba akong price index?
No. I was asking, sir, is this DTI projecting a long-term price changes for Philippine domestic economy? Kasi dahil sa result ng recent announcement of the Saudi Arabia and the OPEC at large cutting oil
Hindi, ang
production.
DTI mismo, hindi kami nagpo-project ng price index. Ano?
Okay.
Mas micro yung involvement namin. Ano?
So how about, sir, yung another
Hindi, yung
issue?
sinasabi ko, yung
Yes.
personal opinion ko, my view sa impact nun. Ano?
Yes, sir. On another issue, are you still monitoring this onion sa mga as a result ng mga price increase? Kasi tumaas na naman po eh.
Tumaas na magkano na ba ngayon? Kararating ko lang kasi
Yes, sir.
this morning, diretso nga ako sa airport papuntang Malacañang, ano? Because I was in Tokyo the whole day with
It's
the
to
meetings.
220.
Oh?
Yes. Sa mga supermarket, sir, 250. And then, pag sa Kadiwa, sir, it's only 120.
Well, ang role ng DTI talaga nga, kamukha ng sinabi mo, monitoring. Ano? At kasi kami may mga tao sa field at yung result ng monitoring namin, ibinibigay namin sa Department of Agriculture.
Sam Danilla again.
Magtatanong lang rin po kami, sir, kung may update na po kaya yung DTI pagdating dun sa negotiation ng government sa EU and US GSP, tsaka yung EU Free Trade Agreement po. Kung may update na po.
Well, I'll be going to Brussels towards the end of June to follow up on the EU GSP Plus and also potentially a free trade agreement with the EU. Kasi alam niyo yung GSP Plus, it's available to the Philippines now given that the Philippines is a low middle income country. Pag naging upper middle income country ang Pilipinas, hindi na tayo eligible sa GSP Plus. So, binanggit na rin sa akin yan nung mga parliamentarians from EU na bumisita sa opisina ko. Ano? Kaya sabi ko nga, so kailangan mag-umpisa na tayo mag-negotiate ng free trade agreement. So, yun ang usapan. And we'll see. Meron tayong support from, of course, the businesses from Europe that are operating in the Philippines and also some members of Parliament of the EU.
Okay. I think that ends our press briefing this afternoon. Thank you very much, Secretary Pascual, and thank you, Malacañang Press Corps. Good afternoon.
Thank you.